the stakeholders within the sports ecosystem. So being the managers, for example, the coaches, the agents, but also the managers themselves who manage sports organizations are aware of the importance and also the moral responsibility of developing players, developing athletes from a holistic point of view, so that they not only are very talented and that they can grow in their talent as athletes, but that they also become conscious human beings and are aware that when they are in the spotlights, they are also role models within society. So there is like a dual challenge we have here. On the one hand, we have the challenge that the athletes themselves are aware and willing and feel safe and make the step to work on their education whilst they are developing their sports career. And on the other hand, we have the challenge that also our ecosystem and the people, decision makers, and the opinion leaders foster this environment where they can also allocate resources in order for athletes to be able to enjoy education and go for this challenge.
I think authenticity, being genuine, is important. If you support something, if you want to speak about an issue, a social issue, it has to be authentic because people will feel it. And action too. I think being on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook is very important. You have a platform, so it's important for you to speak. But action, to me, means maybe more than just words. Being on social media is good, but actions are even more important.
You have to actually educate as much as the deciders who want to stay sometimes in a very comfortable situation. They work really hard. They have the diplomas. They have that life based on mortgages that they have, and they have to pay back. So all those things, you have to fight against this comfort zone. So it's not easy to educate them and say the reward will be like in 1 or 2 years or 3 years, because everybody will be happy about your service in a different way. This is our challenge, and this is where I think at some point it needs to be combined. It needs to be a unit, like everybody all together need to understand. They need to have that kind of, like I said, Mariël said it rightly, the right platform to do that, to feel comfortable, to have that confidence. And without confidence, to challenge even yourself, you're afraid. If someone tell me, oh yes, you get exposed and maybe going into a diploma, and I may show my weaknesses in some way to another athlete or to other people, it's quite tough. So this is where we need to find a way to actually aggregate all those information and market it in a way that is safe and attractive.
For myself, I know that I wanted to work hard. I was so into my athlete life and freestyle life and traveling and stuff. But there was one point in my life where I was like, okay, but why am I doing this? Why am I working? What was my purpose in life? And so I took a time with myself and with Fabien. He was there, and I was like, okay, now I want to do something bigger than just putting videos on social media or traveling. And my goal was to empower women. I found this purpose, and now I'm just I'm trying to do everything in my power to make it work. When we see athletes like LeBron James or Raheem Sterling speaking, we have examples, but we still have to be educated more on so many topics to speak or to act. But I think we're in a good path.
Digital is not just digital, is what is all the information you obtain through this digital process, no? And I think in terms of being able, for example, to increase the amount of money that fans spend at the stadium on match day, I think there is a huge opportunity here in Europe. I mean, if you compare what fans spend on match day here in Europe as compared to what they do in the US, there's a huge gap. And to me, the starting point is, if I want them to spend more money, I need to know much more about them. And certainly digital allows you to know much better who they are, what preferences they have, how do they behave. And I think that Corona, I think it's good to think not just about tomorrow, but think about the day after tomorrow, because at some stage the fan will be back. And we're seeing the vaccine, we're seeing some change. And I think there's an opportunity now to say, okay, when they come back, what will be the experience? But most importantly, since those guys will be coming in stages, because they will not be able to come all together due to Corona or to Corona prevention, then they may spend more time at the stadium, which means an opportunity to offer them something which is in line with what they want. So I think nowadays, as I said, staying relevant and understanding better who my fans are and who my sponsors are, I think it's something that digital certainly can help us exploring in more detail and more successfully.
If you want to catch the next generation, so the Generation Z and the millennials, you have to do naturally in this way, because this kind of generation don't stay sit on sofa to watch normally the television, but they prefer to consume content in maximum 1 hour. So the future will be, of course, to see the match in OTT, because the new generation by the device concentrate the TV, the laptop, the PC, and the mobile. So for sure it is easier to see the match by OTT channel, because you can see the match wherever you are. You can see the match with the subscription, and is easily to go in that way. Now there are many platforms worldwide in OTT market, so it's more simple for the right holder to sell the TV media rights around the world, so the worldwide the TV rights, because you can sell the rights agree with only one broadcaster around the world.
First, I think the valuation that you have in Spain or in Europe are much lower than what you have in the US to start with. Second, I think whereas before it was a league of a lot of talent but very little sophistication in terms of how it was ruled, this has changed dramatically over the last 5-6 years through financial fair play, which is very stringent, and second, through a stable long-term TV rights deal. And third, I think a lot of people start getting comfortable around the idea of relegation and promotion. I think that was one of the main source of concern, especially for US investors, which are more used to closed leagues. But I think now they understand that if you buy at the right price in second division and you manage to go up, there's potentially a huge upside to be made. So I think it's a combination of a model becoming much more serious, valuation level being more accessible than other countries or other continents like the US, and also the concept of upside, which is bigger. And I think in that framework, what you see is a situation where if you do things right, you end up at least turning a profit, or even also being self-sustainable. I mean, you see, for example, now they're releasing all the figures in Spain, and despite COVID, the vast majority of clubs, leaving aside 3, 4, 5 examples, the rest all turn a profit or break even.
I visualize is that starting from India will be huge. In world of football, top 10 in Asia. Our players will be in the biggest leagues of Europe. Definitely, Asia will see a huge influence on the global football. I am sure. And globally, what I see is that we would see a referees with complete automation mode, where we won't see assistant referees. They will be flagging red and green automatically, and there won't be any VAR, and the referees in the middle, they will be automatized through AI. That what I see. And the biggest thing, we will have a superstar in women's football, like Messi and Ronaldo. We will have a superstar in women's football, definitely. and I don't want to see clubs moving into a different direction, and they form a world body to completely isolate themselves from the pyramid, which would be one of the tragedies of football, and that I don't want to see because of the growing.
So what we see here is really a product. We call it the Air product, which we developed in very close cooperation with FC Barcelona, which is very mobile. Takes 2-3 minutes to set up. So it can be set up in any venue, away game, in a home game. And what you do, you set it up. You don't need any battery. You don't need any internet connection. It's not necessarily live, because you want to capture all the data and be able to analyze it and share clips and send to the different parties that are involved. It will create again an automatic production. This small camera, I actually also have it here. It's really very light. It's indoor, outdoor. You can set it up and get completely automated production of the game. This is the start point. You go home, you connect it home or in the club, you connect it to any internet, and you will get all of it later produced. So you will get all the game produced, any clips you want to set up, but also all the analytics. So you can now suddenly tag all types of events and apply all the statistics and graphs and heat maps, whatever you wish, as you would have in professional teams. So this cheap technology, which takes few minutes to understand how to set up and use, can suddenly be used by any soccer academies out there. Actually, Barcelona has a few systems of ours, and we have in Ireland, national team even uses few. Lower leagues in UK also has some of those. So this is a working product, and the idea that any soccer academy can afford it.
FC Barcelona is generating more than 120 terabytes of essential video data, video content every year. For the last 4 years, now Pixelot has been supplying us with a pro-level technology, enabling us not only, and it's important, successfully apply policies to centralize and manage all that video content. That means avoiding any loss or miscontrol of such a huge amount of sensitive data, but also recording or automatically trigger 16 unattended recording camera system that we have deployed in all our fields and courts. These systems are capturing every day training and games from the first soccer team to the youngest academies, to the youngest at the academies and other sports sections, and handball, basketball, futsal, and others, as Alon said. As a result of this victory, under a client-provided framework, we decided to team up with Pixelot to work in liaison with their staff and our club's coaches, analysts, and methodologists. Firstly, to fine-tune the 16 Pro coaching solution, and let me say that wasn't this, because it was a really well-defined and designed solution. But we even that get to identify and improve and develop and test new functionalities to make sure that this solution meets the necessities of our analysts, and by comparison to the analysts of playing or working in other clubs. Secondly, we work together or started to develop and test new camera system that will transfer this access at pro level to the amateur grassroots, democratizing these advances and making them accessible for the Barca sphere, but also for other clubs, academies, schools, and different sports around the world.
And I think it was Steve McLaren, basically said, I've got the guys sat in these chairs. Wouldn't it be great if we could actually do some post-game analysis? So that then led to video being shown after the game. But what was interesting is, we all know when we watch video or watch a game on TV, you only get this much of the game. We don't see the movements of the players. Hence why things like pixel art and panoramic video is essential. We get the full picture. And this is where ProZone came in. So like the start of it all, and this is like over 20 years ago. People think data is quite new. It's not. It's very, very old. But what we were able to do was to install cameras, like security cameras in stadiums. And these cameras allow people to be tracked on the pitch And what that then allowed us to do, and it sounds quite backwards, but we had all this technology to be able to generate a full pitch and have 22 moving dots. And this is what Steve McLaren wanted to see. Yes, it's all very well having a video, but what's the other guy doing? What's the winger doing if we're zoomed in down here? So that's what it allowed. But interestingly, it didn't have the ball. So while event data, which is what we call, ball touches, is used predominantly across, the entire world, it actually started with tracking, which is player movement. And then we added the ball in next to allow us to get that context to understand what was happening. So that's kind of basically how things have evolved.
Specifically, women's soccer players have done such a good job at building their brands. They're not just athletes. They're activists, they're authors, they have clothing lines. There's so much more than just the athlete, and they use their platforms to open up about what they go through. Fans just truthfully feel like they can connect with us on more of a level than just us as athletes. And I think generationally speaking, Gen Zs and millennials, like we said before, they are more influenced and they have a lot of thoughts and they're being exposed to a lot of things. So I think that they want to be a part of the help. They want to help the athletes. And so, for example, women's soccer players, they're fighting for equality. And I think fans and young girls want to feel like they're helping towards that, And so I think just social media has been such a big stepping stone for fans to become loyalists to athletes.
Match attendance of women's matches has tended to be largely, in the first instance, it's generated by each of the players and the friends and family they have around them. And then gradually that grows to a wider fan base. And we see that as fairly diverse, although predominantly in our instance, it's female. And then we recently hosted Arsenal v Spurs in our new stadium, where we had the record attendance crowd. And I think the spectacle of that and the ability to make sure that we could get as many in as we wanted, I think we had over 38,000 for that. That really was very family based. So for women's football, we get it far more family orientated, and supported a lot of it by daughters as opposed to sons, not wishing to be totally stereotypical about this, but I think, again, the difference is there's easier access to the women's football matches. So families can go in groups, whereas for the men's matches, you're probably looking at the original season ticket holder, and then maybe they might be able to take one of the siblings with them.
And I just think social media interaction creates opportunities for fans to just build deeper relationships with players, to model their lives and their styles and, careers and what they see from their favorite players. And I just think fans want to connect with players want to connect with fans by being relatable and caring and, willing to promote the greater good. And I think, fans are looking for inspirations from athletes who stand for something other than their own successes, especially in the areas of quality and even the environment and social change. So, I do see players creating their own brands as a strategy to connect with their fans. Like I said earlier, you see players, they become authors, and then you see players also creating clothing lines. And I just think that's another way to connect with their fans.
Nearly 40% of Gen Zers say they are, influenced by social media in their purchases. And so it starts by recognizing some of those facts. That's what's truly driving the decisions and the eyeballs of this new consumer. And then pivoting our marketing initiatives, specifically in my world, our sports marketing initiatives, to make sure we're accounting for that and really making that a focal point. We very much do think digital first these days in any campaign or any platform we do. As an example, we are sponsors of the NBA 3-point contest here in the US every year. That happens at the NBA All-Star game. And we really start every year planning that platform by saying, hey, how is this going to be consumed digitally? How can we bring consumers and fans closer to this great event that not everybody can come to, but how do we reach, millions and tens of millions of people by giving them digital content and bringing fans one step closer to the event.
And I know you haven't been at the helm the entire time, but what do you see as those key moments that have sort of enabled the NWSL to bring it to this point in a market that 3 times has been tried before?
Well, buenos días. Mi español no es muy bueno, so thank you for everybody for speaking in English. I've only been with the National Women's Soccer League for a little under a year, about 8 months. I joined March 10th. I then shut the league down on March 12th, along with the rest of the sports industry. Record high TV ratings for the National Women's Soccer League versus a year ago. But also, I think, frankly, we took everybody by surprise in the United States sports industry because we were the first league to actually return to competition. It was something that I say, with a lot of.
It follows from sound policies, and there are aspects of policy that we can sort of mandate equitable practices. We saw a new policy starting to emerge last week, with maternity leave policy, which will enable women's players to be able to keep their contracts when they go on maternity leave. So, Sol, I'd like to turn this question to you. We've talked a lot about what got us to this point and this moment we're in. What do you see as some of the next milestones as we start to embed gender equality and equitable opportunities into this pathway? What vehicle for positive change with a particular focus on social inclusion and advancing gender equality? So every day I get to see firsthand the power that football has as a sport and as an industry and as a cultural phenomenon with the power to shape the world. And so I have the great pleasure of speaking here today with the panelists about what transformations they're seeing when it comes to advancing gender equality through football, maybe what they predict and what they envision for the future. So I'm reminded as we think about these conversations, Secretary of the Turkish Football Association, you've led from within the football industry, and now your organization, Women in Football, is focused on making leadership more gender inclusive. So tell us about Women in Football and a bit about the opportunity.
In the 2018 and 19 season before it's not this last transfer window, but the window before, because we still have not measured the ROI of this last COVID season, which has been not the greatest for anybody really. But the season before, we were involved in about $600 million worth of transfers in a consultancy basis with the clubs. Those were beating the market by 5x, and by that we mean that the players we advised to, which were over 120 loans or player cases, are now worth 29% more according to Transfer Market. Transfer Market, it's not the end-all be-all website to analyze player value, but it has become a staple of the industry. And we're beating the market by 5x, so I think it's pretty good. And in terms of that's financial success, in terms of sports success, we've had 4 promotions across the different leagues, and we've won several cups.
For signing a player, you need to cover 4 things. One is reduce the technical risk, that now with a lot of video analysis, live is difficult, but it's more easy. Physical analysis, even tools you can find physical data from a lot of players, and then you can fit. And the other 2, one for me is really, really good in the big data and intelligent artificial, the transition. You can detect a player performing in your country with another country, with a player, with a head coach, and then you need to decide if this player going to your team can perform or not. Then you can use objective data to try and obviously subjective, that is again the human intervention. And obviously the 4 is the psychological report, that obviously is a bit risky because we are talking about humans, we are talking about persons, we are talking about people that have feelings, have problems, have life, and then obviously you can try to reduce the risk, but it's difficult. For me, the use of the data in the transition is absolutely deficit.
We believe that data will be the core engine of growth for the future in the following aspect. If you put in a context the capabilities of personalizing the broadcast plus the 5G technology, now imagine that we can include 5G technology, and I'll explain that in a second, plus 2 types of data. The first one is the one generated by companies like DribLab, in which you get all of the information that you require, but also the data that comes from the audience, and you put both types of data together. plus the world of gambling, then you could, with the latency that will be now generated with the new technology, 5G, there will be almost zero latency in what happens. So what happens when you have a personalized experience, zero latency, all types of data, both from the pitch and from the viewer. And with gambling, you can create a new business, which is live gambling during the games. And we believe that the future of the growth of broadcasting and the growth of the value of rights and the growth of the value of players and so forth will be fueled by this new revenue stream that today doesn't exist, which is live gambling.
To be honest, I think when the final whistle comes, all these players or athletes, the top ones, they actually know if they have done a good performance or a bad performance. But obviously the data helps. If then you get your detailed data, what went well, what went wrong, and it definitely helps the guys. And if it is a one-off performance or if it is a performance where they have weaknesses or that they can improve and work on it. I mean, and once again, all these athletes, there is a reason why they are there, and data is a help for all of them to identify potential weaknesses or potential areas where they can improve. So these guys are, when they are smart and intelligent, it's a tool for them to help and develop and their careers.
If sports would be reimagined now, digital or physical or traditional, it doesn't really matter. The tournament model would have much more winners in between and much more highlights. And even the Champions League, for me, is the best example. Champions League now was more a tournament than a league, really, right? Because it happened within 4 weeks and all of those teams were in one place and was played through. I thought that was the best thing that ever happened to Champions League. I got so excited about it that I didn't have to wait 8 weeks for the freaking next match to be played, but actually 3 days. And that kind of model comprehends compounded content with a clear winner within a certain much smaller time frame is probably what I would expect to actually get accelerated across all sports.
One of the things I find really frustrating with the international sports calendar and the soccer calendar in particular at the moment is the interruptions to the league season for international weekends, where you have like 2 weeks which don't feel meaningful, don't feel like there's a story at the end of it, and it's interrupting the narrative of the league season. I think putting all the international football together in the summer, as the World Cup does perfectly, is a great way of building that story, of having a narrative, having something that sponsors and broadcasters can get behind. Whereas the current model where you drop in a couple of games, players get injured, people travel all over the world, it doesn't work sort of from so many different perspectives. I think that's a real weakness of the current calendar. I love international football, but it's got to have context and a story, and it doesn't feel like it has a story on international weekends.
Every new sport comes and tries to copy the 1960s, 1970s model of established leagues, which makes no sense. If you were to start a new, if the FIFA World Cup were to start today, it would be different. So it makes no sense for new sports, new leagues to follow that playbook. However, for FIFA or for the established leagues, is really hard to change because it takes decades worth of contracts that need to be managed, and it's a very complex thing. So working with the established ones to launch new opportunities, new leagues, new events that can be different, can provide more immediate gratification for the fans. I think it's a good compromise. I as a fan, I much rather have a FIFA World Cup played every 4 years, because it will be really hard to see Germany winning every 2 years. So every 4 years, it hurts less. So
iconic moments, as David just mentioned, and in more recent memory, perhaps Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, and things that have changed the social landscape in some way. But for me, when I think about activism, I think about the act part of that, and how do we really help people find out what's so compelling to them, so close to their authentic values that they want to take action on that rather than impose something more broadly. So I'll open up introducing our panel. David's given you an overview, but maybe you guys might like to just say a couple of words yourselves. I'll start with you, Johan, about what activism even means to you when it comes to yourself as a professional and a person.
So for me, it means a lot because I had the chance to be, first of all, adopted when I was a young kid. I was born from an African mother and I was adopted from a European mother that was in Switzerland. So straight away I had the chance to see the difference of being in Africa and then being in Europe. I'm a woman and you're only a kid, you become a man and you're only 5 or 6 years old. And we wanted really to give those kids a chance to grow up as normal and to have a normal chance in life. So that's why I think activism is for me, and that's why I want to be active.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Sophie, what has activism meant for you as a professional and as a person?
Activism for me is also, as you said, like taking action, not just talking about what is good to do, but actually act on the knowledge that we already have. And for me, it's both the bigger things. I'm involved in some social projects, football project in Ghana, for example. That's more of a bigger kind of activism for me, but also the smaller things in the everyday life, like not eating meat, as we all know is not good for our planet. Or paying aircraft compensation and sort my waste and stuff like that. So it's both the bigger things, but also the smaller things that I can do.
In the U.S., we have a dynamic called regional sports networks that are, some have called them a melting ice cube. And that's a huge revenue source for organizations like ours. And so, as we think about how we build for the future, we need to focus on data and content. Those are the two keys that will lead us into the next decade or so. And then you can add on a third leg of that stool, which is what we call D2C, direct to consumer, and the capability to actually find new consumers. We as a sports industry, in particular the team space, we need to get a lot better, a lot quicker.
I really strongly believe that on the sports rights, the distribution is not matching at the moment with the traditional pay TV. Is not matching the demand and the opportunity that technology gives to each community, to each niche, to each bigger audience, to reach people at different prices and different power consumption. So we need to really disrupt the distribution model that has been active and well run for 20 years, but now I think we are missing opportunity to create more value as a rights holder. So when I expect something to happen and to change in the distribution of live events, particularly in sports, or in the next 5 years.
And I think that those of us fortunate and blessed enough to be in this business understand the opportunity that we can actually leave the world better than we found it. We have this incredible influence with young people in particular. And I think that really matters. And then the third thing is just in terms of a platform. These platforms can be used for good. One part is changing the community. But otherwise, winning can lift a city, and sometimes a country. So we have this. What's different is that while we own a team or we run a team, we're actually just stewards. Like if you think about the lifetime of these organizations, the time that we are in them, we're stewards of the community and of the fans. And so sometimes we make decisions that might seem non-economic or not in our best short-term interest. But those of us that are doing it the right way have the long-term interest and understand our role in the lifetime of these organizations we're privileged to be a part of.
We need to know very well and better in a one-to-one marketing relationship our customer from the second screen from the screen to the street and to the venue, to the stadium. So these are the three levels of a relationship we need to go and make it deeper and much deeper than what it is now. And I think sports is still behind other sector in the analysis of data and the way the qualitative data are managed.
There are elite direct-to-consumer organizations, and that's what we're going to need to become, because as the media industry becomes disaggregated, like, it's going to be incumbent upon us to make sure that we understand how to drive eyeballs and paying customers to make up these huge media rights deals that are just going to change. I think live sports content will still be the premium content. I think the way that leagues and teams divvy up and share who controls what at what time for what purpose is going to change over the next decade. And we as sports organizations, we have the jewels, like, right? We have the fans, we have the data, we have access to them. We just have to get better at being direct marketers, and we will.
For the football also, for the football, there are clubs in Europe, they are looking at a potential sale, but we are at this moment very focused on Leeds United, so I don't see anything concrete in the short period, but over the time we will be vigilant and open, keep the eyes open to potentially escalate the project in a bigger scale. As I said in another interview, I have a vision to create a group of 2 or 3 clubs, but with strong integration on the football side and based in Europe, so in other European leagues.
We've also had a huge racial divide and conflict. And so we've done quite a bit in terms of setting up what we call a Buy Black program to provide sponsorship, access, and marketing for Black businesses. We've committed 10% of our spend to Black businesses. We've invested in a property in one of the more disadvantaged areas to help build a housing community. So we're in the game. I will tell you, it's not enough. It will never be enough. But our commitment is to do what we can to at least give some and ease some of the burdens when we can.